Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Austin Chafee, CMIT, an assistant project manager with Jacobs. I am also chapter president here of the New England chapter. So pleased to have you all join us today for our presentation, BIM, Blockchain, and Smart Contracts, Tools for Construction Managers. I'd like to take a moment before we get started, before I introduce our speakers, to recognize our annual sponsors for our chapter for the year 2021. VHB, PMA Consultants, CBRE Heary, WSP, Whiting Turner, Gilbane, Stantec, Caminetti, Kevel Enterprises, Janney, HNTB, and JLL are our gold level sponsors. Our silver sponsors, Robinson and Cole and City Point Partners, and our bronze sponsors, GPI. It is with their support that we are able to accomplish all that we do each year. And I encourage folks to take advantage of upcoming sponsorship opportunities for the 2022 year. Today, we're using the GoToWebinar viewing platform. All attendees will be muted throughout the presentation, but they can use the chat feature in order to communicate with the organizers and the panelists. Questions can be submitted and our presenters will elect to either take them during the presentation or save them until the end. We anticipate having some time at the end for questions. For those of you joining us today interested in continuing education credits, these are the 4 learning objectives. Attendees of this live presentations will be eligible and will hear from CMAA as a follow-up. The learning objectives are as follows. What are the key features of blockchain that can benefit construction management? How can blockchain technology improve BIM models and model sharing? What are smart contracts and what is the potential role of smart contracts in the AEC industry? What are the potential benefits and risks of employing blockchain and smart contract technology? Now, with that out of the way, I am pleased to introduce our 2 speakers. Nancy Greenwald has experience as a lawyer and business executive in the AEC industry, dealing with projects ranging from $50,000 to $5 billion. She is the executive director of the Construction Institute, a nonpartisan association of diverse professionals working to improve the construction industry by exchanging innovative ideas, building relationships, and developing leaders. Nancy is an arbitrator and mediator for the American Arbitration Association's commercial and construction industry panels of arbitrators and mediators, as well as numerous private clients and courts. She frequents she speaks frequently on best practices in construction project communication, dispute systems design, and best practices incorporating construction technology. Nancy is joined today by Eric Sanford. Eric is the Director of Virtual Design and Construction / Building Information Modeling at Dimeo Construction Company. He is a frequent speaker at industry events, going as far away as Tallinn, Estonia. For the past 22 plus years, Eric has been working to fix what's broken within the AEC industry through technology and process improvement. He has devoted the previous 14 years to the advancement of VDC with a focus on automation and the collection and use of data. He is also a certified instructor for the AGC Certificate of Management BIM program. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our speakers, Eric and Nancy. Let me just really quickly transition to their slides. I thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just jump right in, and hopefully I can get this tech to work. It's not working for me right this second. So when I was in the military, I had a little adage that I took away from that time. It was adapt and overcome. And I find that that mantra actually fits very well in what we do in construction, especially with the advancements in technologies. It seems like these advancements they're happening so fast that it's very difficult to even keep up with it, let alone put them in play. So I want to give you a brief, just a brief reminder of what BIM is. And my goal through all of this, I don't want to bore people with things that they've already heard about, but I want to give you enough insight into what we're doing now that you can make the tie between BIM and the blockchain and sort of build out how the two go together. When we talk about what BIM is, there's 100 different definitions. You can use it as a noun, as the actual model itself, or a verb, meaning that you're actually you're modeling, building information modeling. Either way, it's the same goal. It's really just to improve the process of delivering the facility. Now, BIM, I should start by asking, do you think that you can build a building by yourself? I think that you could probably do it, but it's going to be very difficult. And it usually takes a lot of people to do that. And BIM's the same way. So it's a bunch of people feeding a bunch of information, whether it's just straight up geometry or whether it's the information that's included in the model. But it's iterative. So every time somebody makes a change, it impacts another person. And then they have to look at it, and it goes back and forth until you actually come up with a buildable state. So there are standards, and they're different across the world. And right now, I would say the UK is leading the way in BIM adoption. They have invested heavily into BIM standardization. And they actually recently switched from just the UK standards to an international BIM standard, both of which have been written by the same entity, the British Standards Institute. There are 3 levels of BIM when it comes to the UK BIM. Level 1 is the just plain 2D and 3D CAD. There's low to no interoperability, low to no collaboration, and everyone manages their own data. The 3D or level 2 moves into the 3D world. It's more like what we experience on a regular basis. We all work separately, but we share models and we exchange that information, common file formats. And then stage 3 or level 3 is like a common model, central repository, an open format, and it leads to enhanced integration and also new contractual obligations. So right now, or starting in 2016, the UK actually made it a law. It's mandatory for all government projects to be run at that level 200. And that's a good thing, because this adoption and this integration into government projects pushes across into the private world, because it's the same contractors doing both. Now, the US, we're falling a little behind simply because there are so many different standards for the different government agencies. The policies are really locally based, and it's not across the board. It does hinder the growth. because you're constantly changing. Now there's agencies that are looking to make that make the standards more industry wide, and those are the National Institute of Building Sciences and Building Smart, and they're really focused more on the interoperability and collaboration more than the standard operating procedures. And I would say in the US we have a lot of adoption, but but much less integration. So we're using it, but not to its fullest potential. And I like to make the joke that, on the evolutionary chart, we're just basically baboons on computers. Now, I think that BIM has a positive impact on our industry. And there's been a Dodge data analytics survey that shows that the majority of the industry agrees. Those impacts are like they're improved collaboration, reduced errors and omissions, lowered rework, better communication in the field. All those benefits, they don't come without obstacles though. And some of those would be like the skill levels of the workers. It's hard to find skilled labor to run the models and create models. The cost of the software is not going down. And then the interoperability is still an issue between different file formats. And there's also some, artificial obstacles like risk in contract language. And that's, what Nancy is an expert in, so she'll get us through that. And then with BIM, there's the technology is making leaps and bounds, and this might not be the most up-to-date slide with information, but you have rule-based modeling programs like Dynamo that provide the means to bring that iterative design to the masses, to people that don't necessarily know how to do all that. It can be used also, like we're looking into using it for safety and identifying hazards and roof edge setbacks. Programs like Revisto, they link issues to locations within the model. One of the great things with Revisto 2 that we found at Demio is that the overlay of the 2D data onto the 3D data is a great way to transition our field from traditional 2D into the 3D world. It also works with virtual reality, and we're going down that road. I think a lot of the industry is. Get stuck in the movie. So we build out the models throughout the design and into construction, but really 75% of that building's life happens outside of those two phases. So we end up starting to talk about the digital twin, and this is basically a visual representation of real-time information on building performance. You can even get in there and see where people are in the building if the sensors are tied in. And it's basically what it's doing is tying the model into the Internet of Things. It is the big thing that I've talked to owners about is, when Harry retires, he takes all that information with him. So it's a guy that's been in there for 40 years. He knows where everything is. But when he leaves, that information goes with them. The digital twin is his way of downloading to a model. I like this quote, and basically what I'm getting out of it is the technologies that we have access to can improve what we're doing exponentially. The talent we have, the people, just need to be willing to learn these new tools. And the technologists like myself, we always have to put the task, then the talent in front of the technology. Let's not buy shiny objects just to have them. I think a lot of people have also seen this diagram. In the last 60 years, the construction market hasn't grown basically at all. And technology advancements have just blown up over the same time. You know, and that's a problem. So why is this? Why with the technology advancements is construction still sort of in the background? And really that comes down to one big thing. We don't have time for science experiments. With a 18-month long average project and margins down around 2%, we just don't have time for failure. And if 70% of all initiatives fail, you know, we have a tendency to just stay static to avoid that. I just wanted to show this as sort of an introduction to the different types of businesses or different types of companies. You have the innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, and the late majority. And basically what the blue shows is the number of companies that are engaging with the technology. And what you see is that like the early majority and the late majority, these are the folks that probably chances are your companies. They wait for the tech to prove itself and work out before they invest. That's definitely where I sit. I think we use this to outline different companies, but I think it works at the project level too and the people level. So it's, you still have the same people that are willing to try things out, and that works out well for us. One of the other difficulties with BIM is how many people touch it and how many different pieces of information go into it. So this is an example of a workflow that the BIM Council at the Construction Institute put together. This is for a CMAA, and basically it just shows you every touch point, and you can see quickly how complex it gets. And I like this image too because it has the handwritten notes on it. And really what that's showing is that it's always a work in progress. We're always tweaking it. We're always trying to make it better. And part of the reason behind that is this translation of data and information. So here's a scenario, right? We have a principal at a design firm, creates a 2D design, hands it off to a designer who then models that sketch into 3D to create a coordinated set of 2D documents. The contractors take those 2D documents and then create 3D models for fabrication. That same team then coordinates in 3D. They issue 2D shop drawings for review and approval by the design team. Changes that are required are made in the 3D model, and then they issue 2D layout drawings to the people in the field. After installation, we collect 2D as-built information and we hand it off to the owners. So what happens is we go from, that like old game of telephone where you start with one saying and by the time you get to the end, it's a completely different saying. So we're hoping to get rid of that through technology.
So I'm going to hop in here and talk about talk about the story of Flux. We talk about the technologies as providing opportunities for us to improve efficiency and do better. Well, Flux Factory was a 2015 startup out of the Google X, and they created a suite of tools employing artificial intelligence and created a data sharing platform that incorporated topography, zoning requirements, building requirements, meteorological data, and other site-specific data incorporated into the building information model. And they had this suite up there and available for people to use, and no one was using it. And they finally took it down in 2018. And the CEO's explanation was, and I'm going to quote here, that until the industry is ready to revolutionize its processes, relationships, and contracts, it may be too soon to offer an end-to-end data sharing solution. So there are two concepts here. We have these incredible technologies like building information modeling, And we're not even really scratching the surface in our use of those technologies. And that becomes something to think about when we're talking about, well, now we're looking at the next technologies that are coming down the path. And so what makes us think we're going to do any better with those? And there's some reasons to think we will. But in general, we really need to recraft the ways that we work with each other and to get our contracts in alignment with the way that we work together. So, and they're way out of alignment now. Contracts are written by lawyers like me, and they're really about risk aversion. They're really about protecting people from the risk. So that'll be a part of what we look at when we look at these new technologies. So what level of knowledge do we and do you as construction managers and all the different things that you folks do out there, what level do you need to know about these new technologies? Well, you really need to understand them. So a basic understanding and to have a general idea of who's doing what out there. Because at some point, those technologies will come closer to being things that you want to use that can help you. So we're going to explore today what they really mean and how they might help you moving into the future. So what is blockchain? Points to anyone who puts in the chat the source of this quote, one of my favorite movies. You keep using that word, blockchain. I do not think it means what you think it means. Anyway, there are so many definitions of blockchain, like there are many definitions of BIM, and some of them I think are ridiculous and hysterical, and here are a couple of examples. The premise of blockchain is brilliant, a decentralized ledger that eliminates the possibility for failure by taking centralized components out of the picture. Well, it clearly isn't going to do that. Another definition, blockchain consists of a digital ledger that records all transactions from the beginning of time to the present. I think that's definitely overreaching. And last, blockchain technology is most simply defined as a decentralized distributed ledger that records the provenance of a digital asset. Again, what the heck does that mean? Also, there are all these, what blockchain really is, breaking it down at its simplest level, is an agreed upon set of rules for managing a database. And this definition that I'm sharing with you is what I think is the clearest definition of what it is. It's a timestamp series of immutable record of data that's managed by clusters of computers, not one single entity. And those clusters of computers, not owned by anyone. Each of these blocks of data are secured and connected to each other using cryptographic principles. And they can't, once they're attached, they're verified, and once they're attached to the chain, they can't be changed. So they give you a clear record of what is happening over the course of time. And that really is the value of blockchain. So what goes into that? Can you go back? I don't know whether it's back or forward, Eric, that we have all those other words. Okay, so when you read about blockchain, you're going to see all these other words that are just very confusing. Some of them are words we know, like oracles, miners, nodes, accidental forks. Some of these are mathematical terms like Merkle trees, Turing complete. Distributed ledger is really an accounting term, but really all it means is record. So you'll see a lot of these confusing words. And we'll explain what some of them mean during this presentation. Oracles, we'll talk about in a bit. They're really things that verify information before it goes into a chain. So we call them oracles. Miners are used in the cryptocurrency area. Those are people who use mathematical algorithms to determine whether something is verified information that should go into the blockchain or not. Node is just any computer connected to the blockchain. So you see, when you break through some of this jargon, it really becomes more clear what's actually happening. So let's go back to the slide that tells us what the special characteristics are of blockchain. Okay, so there's public and private blockchains. And first, we're going to talk about public blockchains. Cryptography, which is everything is encrypted with specialized mathematics, and that makes it secure. It's a decentralized peer-to-peer network, and that means every copy of a blockchain is an original copy. Every copy is a complete copy. Nodes, as I mentioned, are just the things that are attached, any computer that is attached to the blockchain. Distributed means it goes out to everybody, and it has a set of validity rules and consensus mechanisms when everybody agrees something actually happens, and that is a block of data or information that they're going to put on the chain. So we just talked about the public blockchains. Participation is open to all. The consensus mechanism is very rigid mathematical proof and is verifiable by anyone. That anyone is the miners who are out there who do this for money. They earn cryptocurrency by doing it. Transparency is complete. Participants are anonymous. There is a two-step process for logging into a blockchain. And the first is a private key that only the participant has. And the second is like that key has a public key. So they have a second key that can be seen on the public blockchain, but it can't be traced back to them personally. A private blockchain is a blockchain created by a single entity, and that entity controls the blockchain by that they set it up in private networks. Participation is permission. So for example, if you were going to have a blockchain that was attached to a BIM model in a project, you're not going to let the public in on that. It's private to the participants in that project. There are agreed upon consensus mechanisms that may require a degree of trust. Right? You all have to agree about what those consensus mechanisms will be. Transparency may be limited in some ways, and participant identity may or may not be anonymous depending on what you choose. Again, there are rules and you can modify them.
Yeah, and these private blockchains are what we're going to be using in our industry most likely when we start getting into it.
Okay, so let's take a quick review of how blockchain technology is being used. It's being used in the mining industry. It's being used in the shipping industry, because anything where you have a step process, it's really good for. So something is loaded on the boat arrives at port, it's unloaded. I mean, that's really amenable to blockchain. It's being used in food to track whether food is really sustainable or not. So there are a lot of people who care very much about that. Take a look at the next. It's being used in insurance. It's being used in electricity. There are markets that have been set up using blockchain for trading. It's really good for keeping track of chain of title of intellectual property or real property. And it's or license certification, like who is really a licensed engineer. There are a number of states that are using it to track licensing. And it's being used in the health industry. And the health industry is a really interesting one to look at when you're thinking about the construction industry, because there you have a lot of different medical facilities with information on a particular patient. And there's a world in which each of us will have our personal blockchain of health information. And we control access to that blockchain, and it can strip out, social security numbers and other personal information that your medical, provider doesn't need to know in order to provide you with service. But the good thing about blockchain is information can be loaded up from different types of software, right? Every medical facility is not using the same software, just like in construction, every company is not using the same set of software to produce data. But when they upload it into the blockchain that's created for a project, it becomes centralized and accessible to everyone. All right, worldwide investment in blockchain and blockchain adjacent startups continues to just skyrocket. Most of this is in the fintech area. Most of it is in the cryptocurrency, area and securities and things like that. But it's definitely increasing in the construction industry as well. Okay, so we're going to take a step back and say, okay, what are the risks? We're going to talk about legal risks now. We'll talk about technical issues a little bit later, but mostly there is at the moment an uncertain regulatory landscape. And because not all states have rules about the validity of blockchains, the legality of blockchains, how they're going to be interpreted. If you have lots of people connected, where does a blockchain live? So in law, and I know there's at least one lawyer on this call, in law we have jurisdiction and choice of laws issues, like where does this thing exist is the question we ask. And if it doesn't exist in one place, that causes our lawyer brains to go a little bit crazy. There are privacy law issues, cybersecurity risks, securities law issues more related to cryptocurrency, and some of the construction industry blockchains may be connected with cryptocurrencies at some point. And when we lawyers start looking at what went wrong, we have discovery issues and evidentiary issues related to the blockchain that have to be addressed. So let's talk about what smart contracts are. A smart contract is essentially a computable contract with self-executing steps written into lines of code. What does that mean? Go to the next slide. Okay, so there's our video. Okay, the very primitive ancestor of the smart contract is the vending machine. You put the money in, you press a button and make a selection, and then it kind of automatically comes out. Well, smart contracts are related to blockchain because they rely on a blockchain platform to work. So I've got a simple example up here. Block 1, materials ordered. Then action, 50% payment is issued. Block 2, materials shipped. This is where the oracles come in. They confirm the material, yes, the materials have been shipped. Block 3, materials delivered. Oracle, yes, the materials have been delivered. Block 4, materials have been inspected. The oracle comes in to confirm that. And when all of that's done, and the action is automatic. And one of the things that can do is speed up payments. So we'll talk a bit more about that. So there are oracles. Blockchain, the smart contracts, it can't access data from outside of their network. So a smart contract will often need information from the outside world to confirm that something has happened. There are all different ways to do that. Here are some examples of different types of smart contracts. There are smart contracting devices combined with Internet of Things devices. There's kind of more like the vending machine, right? It tracks something and then it causes an action to happen. Then you can combine smart contracts codes for a series of events. And then there's smart legal contracts. Yeah, we don't really quite have those down yet. They're more theoretical. And at the high end of what is a smart contract looking like, is the decentralized autonomous organization. And in one state, I read yesterday, I'm sorry, I can't remember which state, a DAO can now be an LLC. So it is a multiple smart contracts combined with governance mechanisms, and no one ever touches it. It eliminates the middle person. So an example of this you could have a building, let's say a rental building, run as a DAO. So rents collected, leases, everything goes into the blockchain. It collects payments. It schedules, because it's hooked up to the IoT. It schedules maintenance when that's required, and pays for it out of funds that are in the DAO. There are all kinds of strange to us but interesting things coming down the line on that.
It's crazy just to hear you say that. Like I didn't realize that. So that's new since the last time we talked, but that's awesome. It's crazy scary though.
So here are some examples of people who are using them. I mean, a really simple one is in the center there. That's the smart contract for recharging your car. You plug it in and you're automatically charged. The one with the airplane is called Fizzy, which is really cool. Don't hold your breath that it's going to come to airlines anywhere in this country anytime soon, but it's a French airline, and it has an automatic way of compensating people if their flights are delayed or they miss their flights. But who knows? They may have actually taken this down since COVID. I don't know. I haven't checked. But it gives them choices. Do you want a refund? Do you want, a discount on your next flight? And you make those choices, and you don't. It takes a lot of the hassle out of that. And then there's some real estate sales companies that are working through smart contracts. Things happen through a blockchain, and there's very little personal interaction. And the last example here is a more complex one. It's a group that is sort of crowdsourcing security. People have security issues, and the people bid with their solutions through the smart contract platform that's been created. So we all know there are legal risks for contracts, right? You write a contract, and if it's out of alignment with what's happening, which happens all the time, that's a problem. But here you're taking code and you're laying it on top of that. So you need the written contract, and then you need the coding, and it's typically not the same person. When Eric and I gave this presentation in a room full of about 375 lawyers, I asked the question, how many of them know how to code? And 2 hands went up. So it creates uncertainty, and lawyers hate uncertainty, which is why they're always trying to dumb things down. So let's look at our industry and what are the potential uses for blockchain and smart contracts in our industry. Here's 3 examples, and I'm going to give you a 4th. IntelliWave is a company that's using blockchain, artificial intelligence, smart contracts. They're also using IoT, RFID. They have a product called SiteSense, and what it really is material management. It's for material management. It tracks everything, and it tracks movement, it tracks inventory, and they're using it on jobs in that way. Next is Herrenbau, which I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that, but that's an Amsterdam-based development company. They do real estate development, they do their own construction, and they are using their own proprietary blockchain-enabled project management system to run their projects. Most interesting are 2, actually. I should have had you add the other one, Eric. Digibuild and something called BIM chain. So Digibuild is a company that is taking aspects of the construction process and using blockchain to assist with them. They have productivity tools, they have payment tools, and they also productivity, payment, and they have materials movement tools as well. So they're moving it into the construction world. BIM chain is the company that's looking at how you overlay blockchain over a BIM model. Now, one of the reasons why we haven't really, one of the reasons why we haven't been able to achieve the advantages of BIM is that everybody's doing their own BIM, right? We have this great collaborative tool, and then we don't collaborate with it. And we don't do that because we're risk averse. And because we don't all use the same software, and we don't all do the same things. The mechanical people are doing their own models. Up until recently, the site people had nothing that looked like anything that engineers or architects use for BIM. And so what this tool gives us an opportunity to have is quality data that's consistent, and because it's in the blockchain, it's traceable. There's accountability, and there's speed. Information that's added to the blockchain becomes immediately available to everybody else, so everybody knows what's going on immediately. It can also, because of the privacy and encryption aspects of it, provide protection for intellectual property, and perhaps limit scope of liabilities. But what it does is it gives you reliable data, and that's the value of it. and it also reduces the need for a lot of back and forth because all the information is going into the blockchain. So those are some of the places that are using it and some of the things, and here are the obstacles. What we do is very complex. There are a lot of moving parts, and you all know that as you're trying to manage these different moving parts. So I created this slide, and someone who's not in the industry laughed at me because he said, I can't think of any other industry in which lack of standardization of processes would be on the same line as risk aversion, because those are two of our problems. We have both problems, and when the solution to most risk is to standardize processes. But that is a problem. And IntelliWave, as they were, talking about the obstacles to the adoption of their technology, is the age-old problem of getting all stakeholders to buy in on a single methodology. Well, blockchain technology allows you to buy in on the record of the information as opposed to any specific technology that's used to put information into the blockchain. And that's where it might actually begin to help us move forward. So whenever we use new technologies, there are potential risks. And let's take a look at what they are here. And okay, I'm just checking my watch here. I want to make sure we have time for questions and we get through all the material. Technology-related claims in construction. Well, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? They really are, it's the same claims. The claims are the same. It's just what's been used to do the project is different. So when I say that claims are the same, it's, delay claims, cost overruns, scope of, the changes that exist, so the scope of work changes, whether they're generated by unforeseen conditions or by the owner or by, ambiguities in the plans and drawings, and whatever the reasons that they're generated, the claims are the same. So, and it's, you can design something in BIM or you can design it on paper, but the claim will be the same. So the technology itself is not yet creating independent claims. Let's take a look at what some of the claims are. All right, so this is, this is what I've just talked about. It doesn't really cause claims yet. We see the traditional claims. But now here are some examples that illustrate that. In 1978, there was a catastrophic failure of the roof at the Hartford Civic Center. And it was thank God, at night, and no one was injured. But it was a complete collapse, and it was an engineering failure. And what happened there was over-reliance on the model. The engineers had a software program that they employed, and they relied on the information that came out of that software program when they did their structural drawings. Well, guess what? The information they put in was incorrect, and they didn't cross-check it. So the roof collapsed, and that was just a failure to do their job right? They didn't check it. And over-reliance on technology is something that we need to watch out for. I know that if you took the GPS away from my kids, they would be hard-pressed to find their way around anywhere, right? Because we all rely on the GPS. But when you don't have the GPS, you need to be able to understand where you're going and what you need to do to get the job done, and use the technology not as the thing that's telling you what to do, but as the thing that's helping you get where you need to go. All right, Trant Engineering versus Mott, nasty little case. This was in the UK, where they actually have a special court for construction cases, and they move through quickly. And Mott McDonald was hired to control the data. And what happened was Trent became disenchanted with them and stopped paying them. And guess what? Mott said, okay, well, then you can't have access to the model. And the court made quick work of that. And, and gave them access. But a blockchain, by the way, prevents that problem because it's distributed. Everybody has a complete copy of everything all at once. Now, that Boeing 737 starts to give us an example of where claims might actually arise from software. And by the way, all your software companies say it's not everything you sign when you sign up for software companies say it's not our fault. It's your fault if anything goes wrong. So just to be clear on that. But here, what happened was there was a computer program that was installed for safety, this maneuvering characteristics augmentation system. And it was collecting bad information, and so it kept trying to push the nose down. And not only that, it didn't allow for a human override. The pilots kept trying to override the system in order to do the correction that they could see needed to be done. And it didn't allow for that either. So, maybe with autonomous, it kind of makes you think of autonomous vehicles. And, is that the software? Because you don't have a human driving those. Who's responsible when something happens? So we are moving to an area, especially anything that's AI controlled, where we might be looking at technology claims that come from the technology as opposed to how we're using it. So these are my 3 pillars of things that can go wrong and things that need to go right. So contract language, project governance and communication, and systemic issues. So let's take a quick look at those. I'm not going to dig too deep into this, but in contract language, incorporating the best practice is in using the technology contract forms that are available. Consensus docs and the AIA forms both have forms that are specifically designed for incorporating technology into projects, and a lot of smart people have spent a lot of time thinking through what needs to be done there. But what we see, and I, as also mentioned, work as an arbitrator and mediator, and so I see a lot of problems. I see a lot of what's up there, common mistakes, vague or missing BIM language, or something that says like BIM will be used, and that's like it. Like, okay, what the heck does that mean? So there's also a lack of understanding of the technology and the construction process on the part of the people who write and administer the contracts from a contract point of view. And bridging that gap, I think, is really important and something that the industry needs to do. And then, of course, there's the inconsistent and conflicting technology clauses and what winds up being a spider web of contracts among project participants.
So over the last almost 50 minutes now, we've talked about a lot of technology that is coming that's going to make big changes in our industry. I think anytime that we have new technologies or new processes, it's important that we develop roadmaps and strong plans on how we incorporate that into our businesses. And one of the companies or one of the owners that I've done work with that I really think is a great example of how to plan for and implement a new technology is Massport with their BIM guide, and they are very very happy to share this information. It's on their website, so take a look. But they have this roadmap. It at first glance it is a very loud, very active, let's say, image. But when you break it down, when you start really looking into what they have on this, it really does lay out the proper way to implement change, whether it's BIM in this instance, or how we incorporate blockchain technology in and smart contracts managing projects. So basically the way that Massport went about with their BIM implementation is they developed an internal team called the Design Technology Integration Group. Then they took BIM and made it a requirement on all their construction projects. So they pushed it into project management. So that's the normalization of it. Then what they're doing now is optimizing it. So the BIM then goes into their facilities management programs. So they're doing a more, they're taking it one step at a time, adding on each time. And what they hope to do is institutionalize it. So then all of their assets enterprise-wide would be managed through the model, or with the aid of the model at least. So it's worth taking a look. I'd go to their website. So we had a few key takeaways. Hopefully, we were able to hit these points for you. I think it's important, very important to know that, the technology can't make anybody do anything, even with the smart contracts, and blockchain doesn't make somebody do something. It just tracks it. We can't take full advantage of the information sharing technology unless we are willing to reshape our relationships. So think about your contracts that you have, not even the contracts, but how you interact with your partners on projects. It would be a completely different way than we do it now. And then for me, this is one that I drive my career on, is choose the best technology to support the task. If it doesn't fit, don't try to force it to fit. If you got to look at your company and look at your people and what you're doing, and really fit the technology to that. I want to end us on this quote. I'll let you read it.
So, no, and this was Steve Jones speaking at our annual leadership conference, and his comment was, if we don't solve the problem of collaboration, others will come in and change the game. And that's really true. I mean, we've seen organizations starting to do that with more manufactured construction and other approaches to construction than the standard way that we are used to doing things. But I think it's really important to understand that collaboration, communication is the key to project success. And there's a 2014 study that was done by the Design Build Institute of America that looked at what is important. It actually was in a report on integrated project delivery, and I think they were hoping that the answer would be, yes, well, if you just do it this way, it will be wonderful. But it turns out that the delivery method that you choose was not what drives success. It can help, certainly, but it doesn't drive success. It's highly integrated teams working together, pulling in the same direction and sharing information. And it's my hope, BIM should have gotten us there. It didn't get us there. I think blockchain has some promise to help us move in that direction, but really we need to help ourselves, and it is about collaboration and communication. So we'd love to hear if folks have questions about any part of what we were talking about today.
Yes, thank you both for this excellent presentation. If anyone has questions, please utilize the chat feature. We'd love to share more information on your specific queries. I can't say that I'm overly familiar with blockchain myself, and so I have to assume that someone else on the call is in the same boat as me. And through the presentation, I was thinking to myself, there are these examples of other companies who are using the technology, and I struggled to relate to them because I was wondering, I always would think, okay, well, they're using it now. What was their process before that? So I feel like for someone who's outside of it, trying to see how it would apply in their own world, they have to find a processy that they deal with that, and they have to understand it, right? They have to understand that to understand what blockchain is going to be able to do for them. So is there any examples that you have that currently isn't using blockchain within the construction industry that, you know, in the simplest of terms, could see this applied to it?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Hopefully I can get through this sort of an anecdote in the next 4 minutes. But I had this project that we got all the way through, getting ready to hand it over, going through the punch list, and we can't hand it over because in this project there was a bar, like a pub. Part of the pub had a handrail, and that handrail never was installed. So when at the punch list time, the architect walked through and no, we can't approve this because this isn't installed. So of course we have to go back in the records. We have to look at where was the disconnect. So basically we followed that chain all the way back and realized that that one element that was missing was really only shown in some obscure detail. Wasn't even, it had no note to it, but it was in the model. Right. So the idea with the blockchain and this really more of the smart contract side of it would be when the designer issues the model to us, the CM, when we go to bid out the work, we should have a mechanism that highlights or changes color of elements as they're being bought out, so that that handrail would never have been missed because we would have seen it like visually, right? But then as soon as that information is plugged in and it goes to the subcontractor, we award the job to the subcontractor, then it can go to their raw material provider to say, you need to order this, provide this to that subcontractor so that they can fabricate this piece. So it's that smart contract can then notify people in that supply chain automatically. So then we get back into Nancy's, her example of the vending machine, and it goes, you have the oracles that are checking, that material gets shipped, it gets fabricated, it gets shipped to the site. These are all getting checked off automatically. When it gets installed, there's a check to that too. So if we had that blockchain and the whole automated smart contract mechanism in place, that would never have been missed. Like that would have been tracked from inception to installation, and it to me, that seems like the way that the easiest way to avoid mistakes in our industry.
And to follow up on that point, it's not giving you a new process. It's recording your process in a new way that helps prevent errors, lets everybody know, it's transparent, and it's just a better communication system, and it's a better record keeping system. And you can, there's always accountability. You can always check back and see who put certain information in, and and then if there are questions, you know where to go. I mean, it has both improved information practice, but also those automated features that help move things along.
Yeah, it's the same people doing the same tasks.
Okay. Well, I didn't see any questions come in, so we don't have any more time. So that's wonderful. It was an excellent presentation. So thank you both to Nancy and Eric. Folks on the webinar attendees, if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to CMAA New England, and we can pass your follow-up questions along to our speakers. The session was recorded, and let's see, hold on here, show my screen. And so I encourage folks, if there are other individuals on your project teams that could benefit from this information, please find us on YouTube or go to our website and find links there. It should be up by the end of the day, because I think this is excellent information that a lot of people can benefit from. And with that, we'll close. Thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.